IP Global, of course, and your leadership, you have you're involved in some of the project that change impact lives, the people at the bottom of the society, even in India, in other countries, in Asia, and in Africa. Now, COVID has brought such hardship on the people at the bottom of society, people at the labor, migrant. How do you look at such issues? What government should do to ease their pain? Because there is a fiscal constraint, of course. There is another aspect of not everybody has a account, PMJ account, which money can be transferred. But what is the solution you offer in this scenario?
You see, here again, I go back to my original statement that it is important first to save lives and then to revive the economy. And saving lives is not only from COVID, but also from hunger. And the biggest and immediate fallout of some of the lockdown decisions taken by the government was really the fact that this whole stream of people who are either already below the poverty line or who had just over the last couple of years, in India signed up to the Sustainable Development Goals, and we had seen close to about 200 million people who moved out of the poverty below poverty line over the last few years. The fear is now that there's most of those people and maybe more will get into the BPL. Now there was, I would say that the government did most things right when it came to announcing the lockdown. But perhaps one area where they could have done a lot more was in the area of the migrant labor. I think that is where everybody was caught unaware of the total extent. I wouldn't say unaware, but maybe inadequate planning had not been done at the extent of the migrant labor that was there. And as you mentioned, even though the government did go in with some direct benefit transfer and cash transfers to their accounts, not all of them had the bank accounts open under the Danjan Yojana, or so a lot of them, especially the migrant labor, did not get the benefit of the funding. There again, a lot of NGOs did come forward to try and provide food and welfare to them, but you still have this challenge of being able to transport people back, and that is where a lot happened. So if I was to really look forward to what the government needs to do, I think the government needs to continue the direct benefit transfer. These cash transfers are a must, and that is something which is going to continue to be around. We will need to have major cash transfers over the next at least over the next year or so. That's something that is very, very important for the very survival. The government has already announced the start of trains back to some of these places. So I do imagine a lot of movement of migrant labor back into their villages. A lot of people are already talking about going that because COVID is probably more prevalent in urban cities, and people feel safer going back into rural parts of India. The government will need to come up with huge centrally sponsored schemes to give them some livelihood, because getting them back and transferring some money to them is one part of the story. But then comes the story of being able to infuse some cash flow into the system to create some kind of livelihood. We saw in the past that one of the most successful schemes of the government was NREGA, the Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. The government would need to probably allocate more funds for NREGA and help recreate more infrastructure at local level to be able to create infrastructure and b at the same time create livelihood. They will need to encourage infuse some funding into the MSME sector, because a very major chunk of even the rural business is in the form of MSME. They will need to boost up the Mudra loans as well, and frankly, the Mudra loans might end up having been written off, but that is a way that they will need to try and revive the MSME sector. I do not see the jobs of the migrant labor coming back very quickly, because most of the industries that we have had anything from 51% to about 68-69% of the labor was migrant labor. Now, the fact that most of the labor has gone back or will be going back to their villages, I don't think they're going to be coming back in a rush, because there's going to be a huge drop in demand of labor to start with, and B, till the time coronavirus really settles in, they are also going to be feeling very insecure about coming back. I see a lot of challenges, especially in the construction sector, because nearly 2/3 of the total workforce was coming in from migrant labor. So now that's going to be facing a challenge. So these are challenges the government will need to face, and government has to infuse money into the system. It's very easy saying that private sector should continue paying wages to their employees. But where is the private sector? You can pay wages for 1 month, 2 months, maybe 3 months. But where is the private sector really going to be getting that funding from? One of my very sort of, there's something that others have also said, but one of the first things that India needs to do is to make sure that the biggest buyers of goods and services is the government. It is important for the government to start clearing its debt, start putting system, and government is announcing schemes like you defer your GST, you defer your income tax, we'll give you bank loans as well. But how are the MSMEs and the private sector going to be repaying the money? Deferment is not a solution. The solution is to give them money, especially if it is money that is owed to them. The government has a huge liability towards private sector, be it for construction activities, be it for infrastructure, be it for goods, be it for services. The government needs to clear those debts. They can get an undertaking from these companies or entities that they will use this money primarily to pay wages of their employees. I'm sure they'll be happy to do that. The other thing that the government might consider doing, and we are hoping for a stimulus package very soon. If you look at what some of the Western countries have done, UK, for instance, has announced that they will pay up to 80% of the salary up to a particular limit, which is, in their case, I think it was £3,000. Anybody who was drawing salary up to this amount, if the employer is unable to pay that salary, the government was willing to underwrite 80% of that salary. So that ensured that there were no job losses or a disruption in paying of salary. Similarly, certain waiver on loans. A lot of landlords are facing problem in their cash flow because the tenants are unable to pay them rent. The government of UK has stepped in and also said that we will pay the rent for a particular number of months if we can see that's happening. The US government, in fact, has been giving for anybody who has lost his job during coronavirus or even before that, the US government has been giving them $1,200 a month for that, which is nearly a lakh of rupees has been given there. But of course, those economies are different. They have more funds and their cost of living is higher. But the government needs to immediately start looking at ways of pumping money into the system and making sure that it reaches the last mile, which reaches these migrant labor and people who are in villages.
Asujit, of course, you pointed some of the challenges. I think challenges are far, far greater for the government. But if there is any silver lining, if we see during the COVID, uh, in the sector of agriculture, we know that this year we have a bumper crop across Punjab, Haryana, and also other places in Bihar and UP as well. The vital question is that agriculture has always been neglected. It is a sector which absorbs maximum number of workforce of India. Is it a time to make some big giant reform within agriculture? Because the migrants who have gone back to their native places across other parts of India, they can be engaged in meaningfully into agriculture. How do you look at such a proposition and opportunity to make agriculture a sort of a viable industry during the COVID, if there is any silver lining we talk about,
No, absolutely. I think, Manish, if you go back a few years or a few decades in India was largely an agriculture-based economy, where we had nearly about 70 to 75% of the total contribution to GDP was really coming from agriculture. It is only over the last few decades that India moved from an agriculture economy to a higher or a high share coming in from the services sector as well as manufacturing. So to me, when we talk about opportunities or the silver lining between after COVID, agriculture reforms is definitely one of them, because as I had earlier mentioned, uh, a lot of labor which earlier was working in industries and construction activities, till such time these economies or these industries really recover, is available and will go back to agriculture. So they will, we need to invest more in agriculture as a nature, come up with more technology and better research around higher yield of agriculture as well, because I do imagine that to be a major mainstay in the next couple of years. The second thing that we need to really look at is also to try, and this is the right time for India to actually come up with the reforms of the kind that we had in the early 1990s, to try and attract foreign direct investment into India, because we do imagine that there will be a huge loss of manufacturing. A lot of companies, global companies, are already looking at moving out of China as far as manufacturing is concerned. Now, this is a golden opportunity for India, because we are not the only alternate that they have. They have alternates in the form of, it could be Indonesia, it could be Vietnam, it could be Philippines, it could be, some of the other Southeast Asian economies. So India needs to move fast and provide incentives and create manufacturing hubs, so that we are able to attract some of these investments in India. And hopefully that will create more jobs, that will make us more competitive, and will eventually move towards reviving our economy.
Yeah. So, and one of the important question: how you are managing IP Global? What are how your development project across the world? What is that position? What is what is the status now? Your financial situation? Could you talk about your entity?
Yeah, sure. You see, as far as we are concerned, we are an advisory or a consulting company which works in this entire space of public health, urban reforms, social economic empowerment, governance, education. So a lot of what is happening is actually impacting, the social sector hugely. Uh, we have very quickly adapted. First of all, we had announced a work from home in our office even 1 week before the Prime Minister actually announced the official lockdown. So we had actually planned for this work from home. We were not taken by surprise on a Tuesday evening that from Wednesday you cannot go to office, or you should not be going to office and there's a lockdown. We'd actually already created mechanisms of weekly reporting, monthly meetings, reviewed mechanisms for our staff, and all our staff had been told to carry their laptops and chargers and whatever else documents that required to work from home. We are now managing by in fact, some of us are actually working harder than we were working during the regular days. We are managing from through Zooms and Skypes and Blue Jeans, and having regular meetings with work plans. But more important is that we have been able to quickly adapt and move towards work that is required to be done as part of coronavirus as well. And that comes partly by us, and partly because all our donors or our clients, be it the USAID, DFID, UNICEF, World Bank, they're all moving towards, the current focus is to see how we can work towards COVID. So some of our state teams, which have been working in the urban reforms or smart city space, have actually been asked by the state governments to help in, whether it's creating help desks, whether it is trying to review some hospitals for preparedness, etc. So that's already being done by us at the state level. And at the national level, we've got a couple of programs, including one on innovative financing by USAID, where the US government has actually tied up with the NHA, the National Health Authority, which today, as you know, runs the insurance scheme and has 20,000 hospitals across. So we are creating a blended, and we are the technical agency that's been asked to work in that area. So we are creating a blended finance facility where we are really going to be raising money both in the form of grants and loans to be available as equity or grants to innovative ideas which help fight coronavirus as well as other communicable diseases. So that's something we've already started. Even under a Norwegian program, NIPI, as well as other programs, we are working with certain state governments in trying to tackle coronavirus. So as of now, we are busy. We are, in fact, some of our teams are more busy, but we will in due course see how we want to go back into office. This might even change our ways of working forever, but we are committed to working in this space, and we will continue doing so.
That is great, Sujit. Thank you so much for talking on such a critical issue in the time of COVID. Thank you so much for talking with Business World. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Manish. Thanks a lot, and stay safe. All the best. Thank you.